Standing on our apartment building's rooftop in Portland, surrounded by 30 of our closest friends and family, I watched my wife Emma hand over the concert tickets I'd been waiting 8 months to get. The indie rock band Velvet Horizon was finally touring again after their 3-year hiatus. And these weren't just any tickets. They were VIP passes to their sold-out show at the Moda Center. The same tickets that cost me 3 sleepless nights refreshing Ticketmaster and $400 I'd saved from my lunch money for months. The same tickets that were supposed to be my birthday gift to myself, our celebration of turning 30. Together, before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. But there, Emma stood, pressing those precious tickets into Ryan's hands, while laughing at something he whispered in her ear. Ryan, her coworker from the social media agency, the guy who'd been sliding into our friend group conversations for the past few months, the guy who somehow always needed Emma's creative input on weekend projects, the guy who was now holding my birthday weekend in his palm while Emma giggled like a teenager. These are perfect, Em. I can't believe you remembered. I mentioned loving this band. Ryan's voice carried across the rooftop as he examined the tickets. You're seriously the most thoughtful person I know. The conversations around us gradually died down. 30 pairs of eyes slowly turned toward me, waiting for the explosion.
Waiting for the shouting match?
Waiting for me to snatch those tickets.
Back and create the kind of scene that would give everyone gossip material for months. Marcus, my best friend since college, stepped closer with that protective look he gets when he senses trouble brewing. Emma's sister Chloe had stopped mid-conversation, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips, staring at her sister with obvious disbelief. Instead, I started clapping. Slow, deliberate applause that cut through the uncomfortable silence like a knife through butter. Every head swiveled back to me as I smiled and nodded approvingly. That's incredible, Ryan. Emma really outdid herself this time. I pulled my wedding ring off my finger, the vintage platinum band I'd designed myself. During our engagement, you know what? Since we're in such a generous mood tonight, Emma, these should go to someone who can really appreciate them. I held the ring up so it caught the string lights we'd hung around the rooftop's perimeter. The band gleamed as I walked over to the gift table, placed it carefully next to the chocolate cake Emma had ordered from our favorite bakery, and turned back to address the crowd. I hope you two have an amazing time at the concert. Music should be shared with people who truly understand it. I raised my beer bottle in a toast. Happy early birthday to me, and happy concert night to both of you. The silence stretched so long I could hear traffic from the street below. Emma's face had gone completely white, her hand still extended from where she'd handed over the tickets. Ryan looked like he'd been slapped, finally understanding he'd walked into something much bigger than free concert tickets. Emma found her. Voice first. Jake, what are you doing? It's just a concert. We can get other tickets. I shrugged, maintaining that same calm smile. It's not about the tickets, Em. It's about priorities. And clearly yours are with Ryan tonight. I pulled my phone from my pocket and started scrolling through my contacts. Marcus, can you give me a ride home? I've got some things to take care of. Marcus nodded immediately, already fishing his keys from his pocket. Of course, man. Go. As we walked toward the rooftop exit, I could hear Emma's voice rising behind us. Jake, stop being ridiculous. Come back here and talk to me like an adult. I paused at the doorway and turned back one more time. Have fun at Velvet Horizon. You too. I hear their new album is all about moving on from things that don't serve you anymore. The 20-minute drive to my downtown apartment passed in relative silence. Marcus kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, clearly expecting some kind of breakdown. When we pulled up to my building, he finally spoke. You want to talk about what just happened up there? Because that was either the most mature response I've ever seen, or you're about to completely lose it. I unbuckled my seatbelt and leaned forward. Marcus, can I ask you something? When was the last time Emma and I had a real conversation? Not about bills or schedules or whose turn it is to pick up groceries. An actual conversation about something that mattered to either of us. He was quiet for a long moment, his hand still gripping the steering wheel. Man, I don't know. Maybe 6 months ago? That night, we all went to see that documentary about music festivals, and you two got into that debate about whether streaming was killing album art. Exactly 6 months ago. And what happened after that debate? She rolled her eyes and said you were being pretentious about vinyl records. I nodded. She's been rolling her eyes at everything I care about for almost a year now. My record collection is taking up too much space. My weekend music production hobby is just noise. The coffee shop open mic nights I play at are embarrassing because her Instagram followers might see. Marcus turned around to face me fully. So tonight wasn't really about the concert tickets. Tonight was about watching my wife give away something that represented 8 months of excitement and planning to impress a guy. She's been texting until 2 in the morning for the past month. I opened the car door. I've been sleepwalking through my own marriage, Marcus. Tonight just woke me up. Inside my apartment, I sat on the couch and really looked around for the first time in months. The space felt different without Emma's constant background noise, no reality TV shows playing, no phone conversations with her sister about celebrity gossip, no complaints about whatever had annoyed her that day. The silence wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. My phone buzzed constantly. Over the next hour, text after text from Emma, ranging from confused to angry to pleading. A few messages from mutual friends asking if I was okay. One particularly long voice message from Chloe, apologizing for her sister's behavior and asking if I wanted to talk. But the message that caught my attention came from an unknown number around 11 p.m. Hi Jake, this is Lily Chen. I'm a music journalist for Portland Weekly. I was at your party tonight. I came with Marcus's girlfriend, Sarah. I wanted to say. I thought your response was incredibly dignified. And also that I've been following Velvet Horizon since their first EP. If you're interested, I have a press pass to their acoustic session at Powell's Books tomorrow afternoon. It's not the same as the concert, but the intimate setting might actually be better for real fans. No pressure, just thought you might appreciate the music without the drama. I stared at the message for several minutes. Lily Chen. I vaguely remembered Marcus mentioning that Sarah was bringing a friend, someone who worked in music journalism. I had a dim memory of a woman with kind eyes and vintage band t-shirt hanging back from the main crowd, looking uncomfortable during the whole ticket debacle. For the first time all evening, I smiled genuinely, not the calculated public smile I'd worn on the rooftop, but a real expression of something that felt suspiciously like hope. I typed back, "That sounds perfect. Thank you for thinking of me." Her response came quickly. Music is meant to be shared with people who understand it. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. See you at Powell's tomorrow at 3. I set my phone down and walked over to my turntable, carefully selecting a Velvet Horizon vinyl from my collection. As the opening notes of their song New Horizons filled the apartment, I realized something important. For the first time in months, I was exactly where I wanted to be, doing exactly what I wanted to do. With no one rolling their eyes or checking their phone, or making me feel guilty for enjoying something that brought me joy, the wedding ring, still on my finger, felt heavier than usual, but not in a burdensome way. More like a reminder of what I'd thought I wanted versus what I actually needed. Tomorrow would bring new conversations, new possibilities, and maybe a chance to remember what it felt like to connect with someone who understood that music wasn't just background noise. It was a language all its own. Outside my window, Portland's city lights twinkled like scattered stars, and for the first time in months, the future felt full of potential instead of obligation. The next morning hit me like a freight train of regret and clarity rolled into one. I woke up on my couch at 6 a.m., still wearing yesterday's clothes, with my phone buzzing incessantly on the coffee table. 17 missed calls from Emma. 43 unread messages. And a voicemail box so full it had stopped accepting new recordings. I made coffee and sat by my window overlooking the Pearl District, watching Portland wake up below me. Food trucks were already setting up for the breakfast rush. Early commuters hurried past with their reusable coffee cups. and the city hummed with that particular energy that made me fall in love with this place 5 years ago. Back when Emma and I first moved here together, back when we'd spend Saturday mornings exploring different neighborhoods and discovering hole-in-a-wall record stores, my phone rang again. Emma's contact photo filled the screen, a picture of her laughing at something I'd said during our first anniversary dinner. I let it go to voicemail. Instead, I opened my laptop and did something I hadn't done in months. I pulled up my music production software and started working on the track I'd been tinkering with since spring. The melody had been stuck in my head for weeks, something melancholy but hopeful, like the feeling of watching sunrise after the worst night of your life. As the notes filled my apartment, I realized this was the first time in ages I'd chosen music over dealing with relationship drama. Around 10 a.m., Marcus showed up with bagels and the kind of concerned expression that meant he'd already talked to Sarah about everything that happened. So he said, settling into my kitchen chair with his everything bagel. Sarah, says Emma. Called her crying at 2 a.m. Apparently Ryan gave the tickets back and told her he didn't feel comfortable going to the concert anymore. I looked up from my laptop screen. Smart guy. Probably realized he walked into a landmine. Emma wants to talk. She's been driving around your neighborhood for an hour hoping to catch you leaving for work. I called in sick today. David's covering my client meetings. I saved my project and closed the laptop. Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. He nodded, suddenly serious. Have you and Sarah been talking about Emma and me? About our relationship? Marcus set down his bagel and rubbed his forehead. Man, this is going to sound terrible, but yeah. We've been worried about you for months. Sarah says Emma treats you like you're her personal assistant instead of her husband. Always asking. You two handle things she doesn't want to deal with, never asking about your interests, making jokes about your hobbies that aren't really jokes. The truth settled in my stomach like a stone. Why didn't anyone say anything? What were we supposed to say? Hey Jake, your wife seems to find you annoying. You looked happy enough? Or at least, you looked like you were trying to be happy. I walked over to my record collection and pulled out an album randomly. Miles Davis, Kind of Blue. The irony wasn't lost on me. I haven't been happy, Marcus. I've been comfortable. There's a difference. I turned the album over in my hands, studying the liner notes I'd read 100 times. Emma and I got married because it felt like the next logical step. We'd been together for 2 years. Our friends were getting married. Her parents kept asking about grandkids. But we never talked about what we actually wanted from life. And what do you want? The question hung in the air like smoke from a candle that had just been blown out. What did I want? For so long, I'd been focused on what I thought I should want: the stable relationship, the shared apartment, the couple friends who invited us to dinner parties where we'd discuss mortgage rates and vacation plans. I want to feel excited about something again. I want to have conversations that matter. I want to be with someone who doesn't think my passions are inconveniences. I slid the record back into place. Last night, when that woman Lily texted me about the acoustic session, I felt more genuine anticipation than I've felt in months. Marcus raised an eyebrow. The music journalist. Sarah mentioned her. Says she's really cool. Used to work for Rolling Stone before moving to Portland. She understood immediately why those tickets mattered. Emma never got it. To her, concerts are just loud rooms where you take photos for social media. My phone buzzed with another call from Emma. This time I answered. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning. Can we please talk? I'm downstairs. I looked out my window and saw her car parked across the street. She'd been waiting. Come up, Emma. We need to have this conversation. 10 minutes later, she was sitting on my couch, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Wearing the oversized Portland State sweatshirt she always wore when she was upset. I messed up, she said immediately. I know I messed up. Ryan already gave me the tickets back. I was just trying to be nice to him because he's been helping me with that difficult client. I thought you wouldn't mind because you're always so understanding about everything. I sat across from her in my reading chair, maintaining some distance. Emma, when's the last time you asked me about my music? She blinked, clearly not expecting that question. What do you mean, my music? The songs I write, the artists I listen to, the open mic nights at Caf Vita. When's the last time you showed any interest in something that matters to me? I ask you how your shows go. You ask if they went fine while scrolling? Through Instagram, that's not the same thing as caring. Her face crumpled slightly. I do care about your music. I just don't understand it the way you do. Don't have to understand it. You just have to care that it's important to me. I leaned forward. Emma, yesterday you gave away tickets to a band I've been following for 6 years. A band whose music helped me through my dad's death. A band I'd been counting down days to see. And you gave those tickets to a guy you barely know without even thinking about what they meant to me. I thought we could get other tickets. That's not the point. For the first time, my voice rose. The point is that you didn't think about me at all. You saw an opportunity to make Ryan happy, and my feelings didn't factor into your decision. The silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of street musicians setting up in Pioneer Courthouse Square, getting ready. For the lunch crowd, Emma wiped her eyes with her sleeve. So what does this mean? Are we getting divorced because I gave away concert tickets? We're having problems because we want different things from life? And we've both been pretending. That's not true. I picked up my wedding ring from the coffee table where I'd left it the night before. This ring represents a promise I made to love and support you. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being partners and became roommates who split bills. I love you, Jake. I know you do, and I love you too. Yeah, but Emma, do you like me? Do you enjoy spending time with me? Do you look forward to our conversations? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. The pause told me everything I needed to know. I think I said gently, we both deserve to be with people who are excited about who we are, not just comfortable with the idea of being married. Emma stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. So that's it? 3 years of marriage over concert tickets? 3 years of marriage over the fact that we've been living parallel lives instead of building one together? She turned back to me, and for a moment, I saw the girl I'd fallen in love with in that coffee shop near campus. Smart, funny, full of dreams about traveling the world and starting her own creative agency. Somewhere along the way, we'd both stopped being the people we were when we met. What about counseling? What about trying to fix this? I held up the ring, letting it catch the morning light streaming through my windows. Emma, if I asked you right now to name 3 things I'm genuinely passionate about, could you do it? Another pause. Another answer. I'm going to stay at Marcus and Sarah's for a few days, I said finally. I think we both need some space to figure out what we actually want. After Emma left, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time, listening to the city sounds below and the silence around me. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of possibility. At 2:30, I grabbed my jacket and headed for Powell's Books. For the first time in months, I was going somewhere because I wanted to, not because I should. Powell's Books on a Tuesday afternoon felt like a sanctuary. The familiar smell of paper and coffee greeted me as I navigated through the maze of shelves toward the event space in the back. I've been coming here since college, first for study sessions, then for author readings, and eventually just because it felt like home in a way few places did. Today, walking through those narrow aisles felt like returning to myself after a long absence. The acoustic session was set up in the rows. Room, a small performance space that could hold maybe 50 people. When I arrived, about 30 chairs were already occupied by a mix of music journalists, dedicated fans, and what looked like Powell's staff taking their break. The intimate setting was exactly what Lily had promised. No screaming crowds, no cell phone lights, just wooden chairs arranged in a semicircle around 2 stools and some simple microphones. I spotted Lily immediately. She was sitting in the 3rd row, a small notebook balanced on her knee, wearing a faded Radiohead t-shirt and jeans that suggested she valued comfort over fashion. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, and she had the focused expression of someone who took music seriously. When she saw me, she smiled and gestured to the empty seat beside her. "You made it," she said as I settled in. "I wasn't sure you'd come after last night's drama." Last night's drama is exactly why I needed to be here. I looked around the intimate space. This feels right. Thank you for thinking of me. Before she could respond, the 2 members of Velvet Horizon walked onto the small stage. Without the elaborate lighting and production of a concert venue, they looked surprisingly ordinary, Just two guys in their 30s with acoustic guitars and voices that had carried me through some of the hardest moments of my life. "Good afternoon." "Portland," the lead singer said into his microphone. "We're going to play some songs for you today, including a few we've never performed live before." This is the kind of room where music was meant to be heard close enough to see each other's faces, quiet enough to hear every word. They opened with Midnight Train, a song from their second album that I'd been listening to on repeat during my father's final weeks in the hospital 3 years ago. Hearing it live, in this stripped-down setting, brought back not just the sadness of that time, but also the strange comfort the music had provided. I glanced over at Lily and noticed she had her eyes closed, completely absorbed in the performance. During the instrumental bridge, she leaned over and whispered, "This song got me through my divorce 2 years ago." There's something about the way they capture that feeling of moving toward something unknown but necessary. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The song had done the same thing for me during Dad's illness, acknowledged the pain while suggesting that forward motion was still possible. When the song ended, the guitarist spoke to the audience. "That one's about transitions, about how sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing turn out to be the same thing." He adjusted his capo and smiled. "This next one's brand new. Wrote it last month, and we're calling it Clear Signal." The new song was different from their usual style, more hopeful. With lyrics about finally hearing clearly after years of static. As they played, I found myself thinking about my conversation with Emma that morning, about the moment when she couldn't answer my question about my passions. It hadn't been cruel, it had been clarifying. During the break between songs, Lily turned to me. "Can I ask you something? Last night, when your wife gave away those tickets, you could have made a scene. Most people would have. What made you choose to respond the way you did?" I considered the question carefully. I realized that making a scene would have been about trying to control her behavior. But her behavior was just a symptom of something bigger. We've grown into different people who want different things. Getting angry wouldn't change that. That's remarkably mature for someone whose birthday party just exploded. Maybe just tired of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. She nodded thoughtfully. Cover. A lot of relationship songs in my music writing. The best ones are usually about people finally being honest with themselves about what they need. The second half of the acoustic session included 3 more songs, 2 covers, and a question and answer. Period where fans could ask about the band's creative process. One woman asked about their songwriting partnership, and the lead singer's answer caught my attention. "The thing about creative partnerships," he said, "is that they only work when both people are genuinely excited about what the other person brings to the table. When one person starts seeing the other's contributions as obstacles instead of opportunities, that's when you know it's time to reevaluate." I felt Lily glance at me, but I kept my eyes on the performers. The parallel to marriage was obvious, almost painfully so. After the session ended, Lily and I found ourselves walking slowly through downtown Portland, neither of us in a hurry to end the afternoon. The weather was perfect clear, September sky, warm enough for short sleeves, cool enough to walk comfortably. We ended up at a small coffee shop in the Arts District, one of those places with mismatched furniture and local art covering every wall. "So," Lily said, stirring honey into her tea, "tell me about your music. Marcus mentioned you play open mics." For the next hour, I found myself talking more openly than I had in months. About the songs I wrote, about how music had become my way of processing emotions I couldn't express any other way, about the small but dedicated audience that had started following my performances at various Portland venues. Lily listened with the kind of attention I'd forgotten was possible, asking follow-up questions, making connections to other artists, sharing her own experiences covering the local music scene. "You should play at the Mercury," she said eventually. "They have a songwriter night every Thursday. The crowd really listens, and the owner books based on talent, not just social media following." I've thought about it, but I wasn't sure I was ready for a venue that size. What would make you ready? The question was simple, but it hit something deep. Honestly, I think I needed to stop caring about whether Emma would be embarrassed by my performance. Lily set down her teacup and looked at me directly. "Can I say something that might be overstepping?" I nodded. Last night, watching you handle that situation with such dignity, it was impressive. But today, talking to you about music, seeing how passionate you are about something that clearly matters to you, this is who you actually are. And if someone in your life makes you feel like you need to hide that, they're not the right person for you. The directness of her statement should have felt presumptuous, but instead, it felt like relief. Someone had finally said out loud what I'd been thinking for months. My ex-husband used to roll his eyes every time I got excited about a new band, or wanted to go to a show, she continued. He thought my work was frivolous. My interests were juvenile. It took me 2 years to realize that I wasn't too much for him. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the late afternoon crowd move past the coffee shop windows. Young professionals heading home from work, college students with backpacks full of books, couples walking hand in hand toward dinner destinations. "Can I ask you something now?" said, "Of course. What made you text me last night?" "You didn't know me, and it was clearly a complicated situation." Lily smiled, and for the first time she looked slightly embarrassed. "Honestly, I've been going to shows alone for 2 years since my divorce. Last night, watching someone else lose the chance to see a band they obviously loved, for reasons that had nothing to do with music hit, bothered me. And then when you handled it with such grace, I thought maybe you'd appreciate the chance too. Hear them in a setting where the music actually mattered more than the drama." Well, you were right. Today was exactly what I needed. My phone buzzed with a text message. Emma, asking if I wanted to come home for dinner so we could talk more. I showed the message to Lily. "What are you going to do?" I looked out the window at the city I loved, thought about the acoustic session that had reminded me why music mattered to me, considered the conversation I'd just had with someone who understood my passions instead of tolerating them. "I'm going to text Marcus and ask if I can crash on his couch for a few more nights," I said, "and then I'm going to ask you if you'd like to get dinner somewhere that has good music." Lily's smile was answer enough, but she said it anyway. "I'd like that very much." As I typed my response to Emma, I realized I wasn't running away from my problems. I was running toward a life that felt authentic for the first time in years. The difference, I was learning, was everything. Dinner with Lily turned into 3 hours at a small Ethiopian restaurant in Southeast Portland. It's a kind of place where the owner knew half the customers by name and the music playing softly, and the background was carefully curated rather than whatever topped the charts. We shared stories about concerts that changed our lives, debated the merits of vinyl versus digital, and discovered we'd both been at the same Modest Mouse show 5 years ago without knowing it. When I finally made it back to Marcus and Sarah's apartment that evening, I found Emma sitting on their front steps. "She's been here for 2 hours, Marcus said quietly when he opened the door. "We told her you were out, but she insisted on waiting." Emma stood up when she saw me, her face hopeful and determined in a way that made my stomach clench. She'd changed clothes since our morning conversation, wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our 2nd anniversary and the earrings I'd given her last Christmas. She looked beautiful and desperate, a combination that felt manipulative even, if it wasn't intentional. "Jake, I've been thinking about everything you said today," she began before I could speak. "You're right. I haven't been paying attention to your music or your interests, and I want to change that." One looked up Velvet Horizon online and listened to their whole discography. "I can see why their music means so much to you." I sat down on the steps beside her, keeping some distance. "Emma, you don't have to pretend to like things just because I like them. I'm not pretending. Some of their songs are actually really good. That one about the train, it's made me think about when your dad was sick and how you used to play music to help yourself sleep." The fact that she remembered surprised me, but it also highlighted how rare those moments of genuine connection had become between us. "What do you want, Em?" "I want us to try again, really try this time. I'll come to your open mic nights. We can go to concerts together. I'll delete Ryan's number from my phone." She reached for my hand. "I know I messed up, but we can fix this." Looking at her earnest face, I felt a wave of sadness for both of us. 6 months ago, this conversation might have been enough. The promise of effort, the acknowledgement of problems, the willingness to change it was everything I'd thought I wanted to hear. "Emma, if I told you I was thinking about quitting, My job to focus on music full time. What would you say? She blinked, clearly not expecting that question. You thinking about that? Just answer the question, a long pause. I guess I'd say that's a big financial risk, and we should think carefully about whether it's realistic. If I told you I wanted to move to Nashville or Austin or somewhere with a bigger music scene? Another pause. I'd say Portland is our home, and we have good jobs here. I nodded slowly. Those are reasonable answers, Em. Practical answers. But do you see what's missing? What? You never asked if it would make me happy? Your first instinct is to think about obstacles, not possibilities. Emma's face fell. I'm trying to be responsible. I know you are, and that's not wrong. But Lily spent 3 hours tonight asking me about my dreams, not my financial projections. The name hung in the air like a confession. Emma's expression shifted from hopeful to hurt to angry in the space of a few seconds. Lily, the woman from last night. Yes. You had dinner with her? Yes. Emma stood up abruptly, pacing to the edge of the small front yard. So you're already seeing someone else? That's what this is really about. This isn't about Lily. This is about the fact that I spent 3 hours with someone who was genuinely interested in who I am as a person, and it reminded me how long it's been since I felt that with you. I'm interested in who you are. Emma, you're interested in who you want me to be. There's a difference. She turned back to me, tears starting to form in her eyes. That's not fair. I love you exactly as you are. Because this morning, you couldn't name 3 things I'm passionate about. Tonight you researched my favorite band like you were cramming for a test. It's not love, Em, that's damage control. The accusation hit her like a physical blow. She wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her since we were first dating. So what am I supposed to do? She asked quietly. How do I compete with someone who just met you and already understands you? Better than I do, you don't compete. That's the point. I stood up and moved closer to her, but didn't reach out. Emma, we've been trying to force something that isn't working. We love each other, but we're not right for each other. Admitting that isn't failure, it's honesty.
Oh.
I don't want to get divorced. I don't want to spend the next 10 years feeling like roommates who share a mortgage. The front door opened behind us, and Sarah appeared with 2 cups of tea. She handed them to us without saying anything, gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze, and went back inside. Sarah had always been good at knowing when to help without interfering. Emma wrapped her hands around the warm mug and was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I knew something was wrong. I've known for months. But I thought if I just ignored it, things would go back to how they used to be. How they used to be wasn't working either. We were just better at pretending it was. So this is really it? 3 years of marriage over because I gave away concert tickets? 3 years of marriage over because we grew into people who want different things from life, and we've been too scared to admit it. She nodded slowly, tears falling freely now. I hate this. Hate that you're right. I reached out and took her hand, the first time I'd touched her since removing my wedding ring 2 nights ago. I don't hate you, Emma. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just sad that we couldn't figure out how to grow in the same direction. What happens now? Now we both get to find out who we are when we're not trying to be what the other person needs. We sat in silence for a while, drinking our tea and watching the occasional car drive past. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant sound of music coming from someone's backyard, a guitar and voices singing something I didn't recognize, but that sounded like joy. Can I ask you something? Emma said eventually.
Of course.
Are you going to see her again?
Lily?
I considered lying or deflecting or saying it was too early to know. But Emma deserved honesty, even if it hurt. I hope so. She gets excited about the same things I do. When I talk about music, she lights up instead of looking bored. Emma winced, but nodded. I always thought your music stuff was nice, but I didn't understand why it mattered so much to you. And that's okay. Not everyone has to love music the way I do. But the person I'm with should at least respect that it's important to me. I should have tried harder to understand. Both should have tried harder to be honest about what we needed. Emma finished her tea and stood up. Give you time to figure out what you want to do about the apartment, Em. It's okay, Jake. You're right about all of it, and I hate that you're right. But you are, she managed a small smile. I hope she makes you happy. I hope she's everything I couldn't figure out how to be. After Emma left, I sat on Marcus and Sarah's front steps for another hour, processing what felt like the end of one life and the beginning of another. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Thank you for dinner tonight. I haven't talked about music that way with anyone in a long time. If you're free Thursday, the songwriter night at the Mercury starts at 8. No pressure, but I think you're ready. I stared at the message for several minutes before typing back. I'll be there. And thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be excited about something again. Her response came quickly. That's what good music does. And good people. Later that night, lying on Marcus and Sarah's pull-out couch, I thought about the conversation with Emma and felt something I hadn't expected: relief. Not because our marriage was ending, but because we'd finally been honest with each other about why it wasn't working. For the first time in months, neither of us was pretending anymore. I pulled out my phone and started writing a new song. Something about the moment when you stop fighting the current and let it carry you toward whatever comes next. The melody came easily, like it had been waiting for me to be ready to hear it. 6 months later, I stood backstage at the Crystal Ballroom, tuning my guitar and trying to calm my nerves before the biggest performance of my life. The venue was sold out. 1,200 people who had come to hear local artists as part of Portland Music Week. My name was on the poster alongside established acts I'd been admiring for years. You ready for this? Lily appeared beside me, press badge hanging from her neck and that familiar encouraging smile on her face. She'd been covering the festival for Portland Weekly, but tonight she was also here as my girlfriend, a title that still made me ridiculously happy 6 months in. As ready as I'll ever be, I said, adjusting my guitar strap. Still can't believe I'm opening for the Decemberists. Believe it. Your EP has been streaming like crazy since that review in Willamette week. People are excited to see you live. The EP, 3 months ago, I'd finally recorded the songs I'd been working on for years, including the one I'd written that night on Marcus and Sarah's couch about letting the current carry you toward something new. Lily had connected me with a producer friend, and what started as a small project had turned into something that was actually getting radio play on local stations. My phone buzzed with messages from friends wishing me luck. Marcus and Sarah were somewhere in the audience, along with my coworkers from the marketing agency, where I'd negotiated a part-time schedule to focus on music. Even David, my boss, had bought tickets and promised to be in the front row. 5 minutes, the stage manager called out. I looked out at the crowd, through a gap in the curtain. 1,200 faces, all here for music. 6 months ago, the thought of performing for more than 50 people would have terrified me. Now it felt like coming home. Hey, Lily said, touching my arm gently. Remember what you told me that first night at dinner? About how music is your way of processing emotions you can't express any other way? I nodded. Tonight, 1,200 people get to feel what you feel. That's a gift. She kissed me quickly and headed back to the photo pit. I watched her go, still amazed by how different it felt to be with someone who understood that my music wasn't just a hobby, it was part of who I was. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jake Morrison. The lights hit me as I walked onto the stage, and for a moment I was blinded by the brightness and the energy of the crowd. Then I found my spot center stage, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at all those faces waiting to hear what I had to say. Good evening, Portland, I said, and the crowd cheered. 6 months ago, I was a guy who played coffee shops and open mics, wondering if anyone would ever really hear my songs. Tonight I get to share them with all of you in this incredible room. Thank you for being here. I started with Clear Signal, the song I'd written about finally hearing clearly after years of static. As the opening chords filled the ballroom, I saw people in the audience start to sway. Some singing along to words they'd learned from the EP. The feeling was electric, 1,200 people connecting with something I'd created in my small apartment during the loneliest period of my life. Halfway through my set, I spotted a familiar figure near the back of the venue. Emma, standing by herself near the bar, watching intently. She looked different, her hair was shorter, and she was wearing clothes I didn't recognize. She'd moved back to Seattle 3 months ago for a job at a tech startup, something she'd mentioned during one of our few conversations about dividing our belongings. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and she smiled not the desperate smile. From that night on, Marcus's front steps, but something genuine and peaceful. She raised her drink in a small toast, and I nodded back before continuing with the song. Emma was still there, looking surprisingly relaxed. "Was incredible, Jake," she said when I reached her. "I mean, I always knew you were talented, but seeing you up there in front of all these people, you looked like you belonged. Thank you. I wasn't sure you'd be here. I'm in town visiting Chloe. She told me about your show and I couldn't miss it." She took a sip of her drink. "I owe you an apology. Emma, you don't—" "Yes, I do. For months, I made you feel like your music was an inconvenience instead of a gift. I was so focused on what I thought our life should look like that I forgot to pay attention to what actually made you happy." I studied her face, looking for signs of the desperation I'd seen 6 months ago. Instead, I saw something that looked like acceptance. "How are you doing, really?" "Better than I expected," she said honestly. "The job in Seattle is challenging in good ways. I'm seeing another marketing director who actually thinks my social media obsession is useful instead of annoying." She laughed. "And I've been going to therapy to figure out why. I spent so many years trying to change people instead of finding people who were right for me as they were. I'm glad you're happy." "I am. And you look happy too. Really happy. Not just comfortable." Before I could respond, Lily appeared at my elbow, slightly out of breath from pushing through the crowd. "Sorry that took forever. Everyone wants to interview you." She looked between Emma and me, clearly recognizing my ex-wife from photos, but not showing any jealousy or discomfort. "Lily, this is Emma. Emma, this is Lily, a music journalist," Emma said, extending her hand. "Jake mentioned you were the one who helped him see Velvet Horizon after I screwed up his birthday." "Water under the bridge," Lily said graciously. "Your loss was definitely my gain." Emma laughed, a real laugh without any bitterness. "I can see why he fell for you. You to make sense together in a way Jake and I never did." The three of us talked for a few more minutes about the show, about Seattle, about the strange ways life works out. When Emma finally said goodbye, she hugged me briefly and whispered, "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what you needed, but I'm glad you found someone who gets it." Later that night, Lily and I sat on the rooftop of my new apartment, a one-bedroom in the Arts District with space for my equipment and walls covered in vinyl records and concert posters. The city spread out below us, twinkling with possibilities. "So," Lily said, curled up against my side, "how does it feel to be Portland's newest rising star?" "Surreal. 6 months ago, I was married to someone who thought my music was a phase I'd grow out of. Tonight, 1,200 people sang along to songs I wrote in my bedroom. Life's funny that way. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the push you needed toward the best thing." I thought about that night on the rooftop, watching Emma give away the concert tickets that represented everything she didn't understand about me. At the time, it had felt like betrayal. Now it felt like liberation. "Thank you," I said, kissing the top of Lily's head. "For what?" "For seeing who I actually was, instead of who you thought I should be." She looked up at me, eyes bright, with the reflection of the city lights. That's the easy part when you love someone for the right reasons. Down below, Portland hummed with late-night energy music spilling out of clubs, couples walking hand in hand past food carts, artists, and dreamers making their way through a city that celebrated creativity. Tomorrow, I'd start working on new songs. Next month, I had 3 more shows booked. Next year? Who knew? For the first time in my adult life, the future felt wide open, full of melodies waiting to be discovered and stories waiting to be told. And I had someone beside me who wanted to hear every single one. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.